Hello and welcome back to this course of videos on Node.js. In this video we're going to be looking at the way that clients, i.e. browsers, and servers, i.e. our Node server, communicate to each other via a protocol called HTTP, which is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Now, up until now in this course of videos we have been transferring data from one place to another. But remember, we looked at streaming, and we streamed from a text file to a separate text file. We read from one text file to another text file. However, this was all on the server side. This is within our Node server. We were transferring from a text file on the server, readme.txt if you remember, and writing to writeme.txt, but all within the server environment. What we're looking at now is a completely different change of pace. We're looking at clients, like I said, browser. It could also be, you can use something called curl, C-U-R-L, which kind of mimics a browser, but most of the time it's browser. So client is actually going to send a request to our server, and then our server is going to send this data across the network, across the internet, back to the client. So this is a completely different paradigm. So the way that clients talk to servers is through something called a request object. So you would initiate a request object on your browser, for example, by typing into the URL google.ca or google.com. That would generate a request to the server for Google. Could be Node, I'm not sure what Google use. So this request object has two distinctive parts to it, a header and a body. Now, if we look at the header, first of all, within the header there are actually also two distinct sections. There's really what we would call the title of the header, or what I call the title, and this title for the header has three distinct components. The first one is the request type. Now, there's a number of different request types. The most common that you'll see is get, that you have here, and post. Now, get means give me something. I want to get something. Please just give me something, Mr. Server. Post is actually saying, the client is saying, hey, Mr. Server, I have some data for you. Here, I'm posting, as if you post a letter in the mail. The client is posting something and giving some data to the server. In our case, we're just looking at a GET request. They are the most common. The second piece of the header title is the URL that the client is requesting from the server. In this case, we're requesting index.html. Most people name their home page as index.html. And in this request, that's what we're looking at getting from the server. The third part of the header title is simply the protocol. HTTP 1.1 is the protocol that is used at the moment, and that is put here in this title. Now, the second part of the header are the header fields. Now, this is the client's opportunity to tell the server much more about what is included in this request. Now, a very important header field is the host. Like the client has to communicate where it wants to go. So basically the URL of the server has to be put in the request, otherwise the request is going to get lost in the internet. It has to have a direction. And there's a number of other things that you can add, a number of other header fields that can be added to help the client communicate to the server what to expect. Now, the body section of a request, like I said, a GET request is simply, please give me something, Mr. Server. If this was a post, if we were posting data, then the data would be included in the body. And if we did include data in the body, another header field we would need to add would be content type, because we would need to let the server know what type of data we are passing through to it. Now, so this request reaches our server, and you will see in the next video that the server is an event emitter. I spoke about before. And what we can do is have this event emitter listen for the request event. So it will listen for a request, and then we will attach an event handler that the server will action when it receives this request. We'll be doing that in the next video. So the server's going to receive this request, and as part of the event handler, the callback function that it uses, it's going to generate a response back to the client. Now, this response has a very, very similar format. This response object has a very similar format to the request object. Again, we have our header and our body. Again, the header section has kind of the title and the header fields. The title in the response only has two pieces. Remember, before we had three components to the header title. In the response, we only have two components. HTTP 1.1, which is the same as we had with the request. That is just the protocol. And the second part of the response title is, I've got 200 OK here. So this is a server saying, okay, I found your file, everything's okay, I'm sending it back to you. So 200 is the code for OK. Now, there could be some instances where the server looks for the file that the client asked for, and the server doesn't find it. In that case, he would put the server would put 404, not found. It would say, I couldn't find it, but it would need to communicate that back to the client. Now, so after the header title, again, we have the header fields. There can be many of them, as there can be in the request object. A very important header field that is always used is content type. Now, we mentioned content type in the case where we do a post request. We have to have content type because we have to tell the server what kind of data the client is posting in the body. Same in this case. The server needs to tell the client, hey, this is the kind of data that you're receiving in the body of this response. Now, in the next video, we'll be using our, we're going to be communicating our readme.txt across the network to our client. So we need to tell the client what kind of data is coming back in this body. So in that case, it's going to be text, and we'll write it as text/plain. That's called the MIME type. Now, if the server was communicating back HTML, it would communicate text/HTML, so the client knows how to interpret this data. It could be communicating a JavaScript file. It would say application/JSON. It could be communicating back an image, and the content type header field would say image.jpg. So the client knows what to do when it receives this data. So I hope this gives you a good introduction to HTTP protocol and the request and response object. And in the next video, you will see it